Hi guys, welcome to my April reading wrap up. It's about 9:30 at night and I'm feeling very cozy. I have only cozy lighting on and I have a slightly rambunctious cat in my lap right now and some tea I'm trying to keep away from her. So I hope you're also feeling cozy right now and ready to relax and talk about books. In last month's reading wrap up, I went in chronological order, but in this month's reading wrap up, I kind of just want to go based off of vibes. I don't want to remember every single order for every single book I read. I'm just going to chat about them generally. And first, I remembered last time I didn't mention what my reading goals were for the year in general. I tried to keep them pretty loose and I only made them in March, so I'm not being that strict about it. But some of my goals were read a classic every month and read a new author every month. Reading a new author one isn't that hard. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't only reading Jane Austen or Lisa C novels or something like that. And also had a goal of reading 6 nonfiction books total this year. I wanted to start a series, which I have. I think I started at least one series this month, so I'll talk about that. And I think those were my goals, besides get a library card, which I did back in March. So, doing great. First thing I wanted to share was all of the books I acquired this month, which was way more than usual. I usually try to buy a book and then read it, and buy a book and then read it, but something got into me and I was in the book buying spirit. So I have a pretty big stack of books. I'm not going to try to pick them all up again, but I want to show these 3 together. I went to a Japanese bookstore here and I got the Lantern of Lost Memories, the Emissary, and The Hole. The Hole was the one I was most excited to read, and I actually didn't end up reading it this month, so I'll have to read it in May. From a secondhand bookstore, I got A Wrinkle in Time for the Leve Book Club this month, and I also got Shanghai Girls, which is the next novel by Lisa C that I plan on reading. I also went to Book People, which is quickly becoming one of my favorite stores, my favorite bookstores in Austin. And I got The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clark. This is such a pretty, tiny little book I'm excited to read. Probably will save this one for winter to try to make it feel a little more cozy, maybe in December. I was also so surprised to see these 2 books. I thought that I was going to end up having to order them online. This is the Gut Dream Department Store and A Magical Girl Retires. I really want to read Magical Girl Retires too. It just seems so much fun. These are both South Korean books and they had a whole section of translated fiction at Book People and all kinds of books were there, and there were a few others that were on my list too. Book People had so many of the books that were on my list, and so seeing these I got really excited just because I didn't think I'd be able to find them, and I went ahead and picked them up. I'm gonna save the Gut Dream Department Store for a very cozy, whimsical type of mood, which maybe this one could cover too. But I love magical girls. I loved watching Sailor Moon. I love just the whimsy and the vibes. And look at the cover inside of the dust jacket. You get the whole print, and I think also inside of the pages I noticed at like the beginning of a chapter there's illustrations as well, so I'm really excited to read this one soon. Next I went to another indie bookstore and couldn't actually find a book I was looking for, but I'd never bought a pure romance book before, so I got Under Lock and Key, which I have started reading and I'll talk about next month. One book I was really excited to read in April because of Earth Month and kind of the Earth themes to it is Wild Dark Shore, and I did start it yesterday. They had to special order it from Book People. They said that they were getting a shipment in, so they put my name on one of them, and I went and picked it up yesterday and I already started it. I'm so excited to talk about it. I'll talk about it. So far I'm excited to talk about it, but that'll have to wait for another video. So let's get the DNFs out of the way first. There were only a couple this month. One of them was A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. I was really looking forward to this. I'd seen it suggested that the writing would be similar to a Jane Austen novel with the humor, and it wasn't bad. This is a story of a girl from England who goes on vacation to Italy, and the people that she meets there are very different from herself. And I only got 3 or 4 chapters in, so I can't say much more than that. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't as engaging as I was hoping for, and I just didn't feel in the mood to push my way through an uninteresting book at the moment. I was looking at reviews for it and it seemed like the movie is better than the book, so I'll probably just watch the movie soon. My second DNF for this month was We'll Prescribe You a Cat by Seo Ishida, and I got about, I think I finished the first like chunk of story a few hours into this audiobook. The premise is that there's a kind of mysterious clinic. You go, you tell them what your issue is, like it's a doctor, and he gives you a cat and tells you stay with this cat for however many days and then come back. And I got through the first story and it was fine. Not that engaging. It's about a Japanese office man kind of trying to find what he wanted out of life. And they prescribed him a cat and he was, you know, having to figure out how to take care of it. Never had a cat before. And then the second story started and it was almost the exact same premise. And I know there were a few more stories in it, but I didn't feel like listening to the same thing again, and so I just cut it off there. The cat was also put in some distressing situations, which just stressed me out listening to, and it wasn't the relaxing read I hoped for. While we're on the theme of audiobooks, I finished 2 audiobooks this month. I, at the very beginning of the month, finished Persuasion by Jane Austen. In Persuasion, Miss Anne Elliot is going about life trying to help her family navigate a new financial situation, and she also ends up running into an old fiance. I can't remember if he was her fiance initially or what exactly happened with that, but ends up meeting him. There's kind of just some tension of trying to decide, like, is he interested in someone else? Is she still interested in him? Like, what's going on? And this was narrated by Cynthia Erivo. Cynthia Erivo has a lovely voice, beautiful British accent. It fit really well. However, she didn't really do character voices like a lot of other audiobook narrators. So I found that I was really struggling to tell what was going on in the book. I couldn't really tell what was a character speaking, who was speaking, when it was like narration versus dialogue. It just made it a little bit harder to listen to, which was kind of a bummer. I also thought listening to this that perhaps the story of Anne Elliot would be a lot more engaging based on the little bits that I do know about Jane Austen's life. I think if I knew more about her life and could kind of get more depth, then I would have appreciated Persuasion more than I did. I know Jane Austen moved around a lot and had basically housing insecurity. I'm going to read the book Jane Austen at Home by Lucy Worsley at some point. I'm really excited. So I do think I would have appreciated the book more if I had a deeper understanding of Jane Austen's life. This book actually ended up being my least favorite Jane Austen novel, which was disappointing. This was the third or fourth Jane Austen novel I've read. The other audiobook I listened to was also by Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. I wanted to read this before the movie came out. The re-release of the Pride and Prejudice 2005 movie into theaters for their 20th anniversary happened recently, and I don't think I started this soon enough. I think I was like, yeah, I'll listen to the whole thing in a week and it'll be fine, where usually it takes me a few weeks to get through audiobooks. I finished this on at 2x speed as we were rolling into the parking lot and parked the car and walked into the movie theater. So I cut it really close. Because I listened to the book so quickly, I felt like I didn't get as much out of the story as I typically would, but I did think that the writing and the story itself was some of the most entertaining of Jane Austen's books. I'm not sure where I would rank it. Maybe my third favorite. I think I enjoyed Sense and Sensibility more, and Emma so far is my favorite Jane Austen novel, but I did enjoy really comparing it with the movie. I'm not like an expert on the movie. I've seen it only a handful of times and not in a few years, so I didn't realize what would be in the movie and what would be in the book. And mostly everything that was in the book was in the movie, but I feel like they really condensed a lot of it and left out the parts that would give everything a bit more depth. Even though I did read it so quickly, I thought this was a great book. I look forward to reading it again one day and getting a little more out of it at a little bit of a slower pace. The first book I want to talk about is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline Long. This is a beloved by many children's book. I read this actually for the Leve book club this month. I have never read it before. I've not seen the movie, didn't have any knowledge of it going into it. And it's a very, very fantastical, a little bit darker than I expected story about a girl named Meg who goes on a journey to look for her father, and she's taken away by Mrs. Wetsit and Mrs. Witch, and it's actually got a little bit of a science fiction bit to it. I did enjoy the odd, fantastical whimsicalness to this. There's some really cool scenes to read. I felt like overall though, I'm not sure if it's because it's a children's book. This is the first children's book I've read as an adult, but I felt like the characters were a little bit shallow, and the way the plot resolved at the end, which it resolved really quickly, I feel like that's okay. The solution that they chose for it just seemed a little bit weak to me. I think it's a great message for kids. Overall, this book was cute and it was fine. Right after I finished that, I had a really strong desire to start reading The Emissary by Yoko Tawada. The Emissary is such an intriguing novel. It's translated from Japanese, and it's a dystopian book in which Mume lives with his grandfather, Yoshiro, and the writing in it is just very eccentric. I find this book really hard to describe, so I'm going to read a couple sentences off the back of the book. The Emissary is a breathtakingly lighthearted meditation on mortality. After suffering a massive, irreparable disaster, which isn't named or gone into at all, it's left very, very vague, Japan cuts itself off from the world. Children are born so weak they can barely walk. The only people with any get up and go are the elderly. And they kind of allude to the fact that the elderly in this book are actually immortal. They have no idea when they're going to die. And that's in such a stark contrast to the children of this book, who really can barely walk. They struggle to take a few steps. Their teeth are really weak. They can barely eat food. And even though it's kind of a dark concept, the way that this is written is kind of just oddly delightful. I feel like there's so many quotes I could read from this, but let me find just one that was towards the beginning that I thought was really interesting. Mume took a large model wisdom tooth and put it down on the floor, pushing it along the red carpet like a toy truck. Imagining a world without people, where huge teeth had turned into trucks to roam the highways, Yoshiro shuddered. I feel like that's not even the best example, but if you're into really, really interesting writing, I think you would enjoy this book. This is definitely literary fiction and also just very thematic. I wouldn't read this hoping that you're going to learn about like why things happen. They don't really go into why there's a natural disaster, why children are so weak, why the elderly are living so long. They just kind of go over a lot of different themes like isolationism, life and death, aging, family, things like that. You also kind of mostly are following the perspective of Yoshiro, the grandfather, or the great-grandfather rather, and a little bit from Mume, and I think a little bit from the great-grandmother as well. There's a few characters that kind of like suddenly shifts to, and I thought that was really interesting. And I felt like I was really torn after reading this as to whether or not I would rate it 3 stars or 4 stars. I think the lack of plot kind of maybe want to go towards 3 stars, but because I found the writing just so interesting and delightful, and it's just such a fascinating concept, especially after I read more about it. I was googling and reading all kinds of reviews and critiques and things like that. Because of all that, because it was so interesting, I did end up going with 4 stars, but even though I really, really enjoyed it, I don't think this is for everyone. definitely look it up and maybe read a page or two somewhere and see how you feel about it, but I thought it was great. Continuing on the Japanese literature theme, I thought I would talk about The Lantern of Lost Memories. This is also a really whimsical book. It's about a person who runs a photography studio that you arrive at after you die. It follows 3 different stories of people. They arrive at this photo studio, they have all these photos to look at from across their lives, and they're supposed to go and pick out their favorite ones and see so they can see them on a lantern, kind of like having their life flash before their eyes. Felt like a little slice of life anime in a way with the tone. And the stories got a little bit darker. I wouldn't say super dark, but more heavy, I guess, as they went on for each 3. I will say the 3rd story had some really graphic bits that I really wasn't expecting based on the tone of the rest of the book. So definitely look up the content warnings before reading this. I think if you're worried about that, it would be worth doing. But I did enjoy this. I think I read it in a couple days. It's a pretty small book and just a nice cozy read. Okay, I'm really excited to talk about the series that I read, but before I get to that, I want to go over one more book. The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters is a story where you flip back and forth between two different perspectives between a brother and a sister, covering many, many decades. This is a literary fiction set in 1962, or at least that's when the book starts. The family in this book is from the Mi'kmaq people, and I was really intrigued to read this. It's set between Nova Scotia and Maine and a little bit of Boston. And I was intrigued by this because before I bought it, I had just finished rewatching Anne with an E, which is set in Prince Edward Island, and Anne, granted much earlier, but Anne is friends with a Mi'kmaq girl in the show, and I was hoping that I would get more insight into their culture, but I feel like obviously it does affect their lives quite a bit, I think, but not in the same depth I was hoping for. So in this book, you're following both Ruthie and Jo. Ruthie disappears when she's very, very little. The whole family is kind of left to deal with that grief, and she is left to grow up with a different family. The prologue of the book gives away the ending, so there is no tension throughout the book. I think if you're into like pure literary fiction, just want to experience someone's lives and their thoughts and learn about different experiences, then this will be a great book for you. I just felt like I kind of had to force myself to get through it because there wasn't anything grabbing me to pull me forward. I do enjoy literary fiction, but knowing how this was going to end already didn't make me want to keep going. I'm kind of bummed. This is the second like fruit themed slight historical fiction with Native American or Canadian First Nations people that I have read. Last month I read, was it in March? I think so. I read Go as a River by Shelley Reed, and super cute covers, both of them, but they both just left me disappointed, and I felt like neither of them kind of had the depth that I was wanting, either culturally or even with characters. Even though both literary fiction, I felt like there just wasn't as much there as I was hoping for. I'm super excited to talk about the series I started reading this month. I read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, the Empyrean series. I had never read romantasy before, haven't read this type of high fantasy in quite a long time, so I thought that I would just see how it was, see what all the hype was about. I honestly did not have very high expectations. I thought that it would be fine. I wasn't sure if I would like it at all, and honestly the first chapter was so rough. It was kind of cringy, just the dialogue. I had to push myself through that. But once I got past it and more into the story, I did really, really enjoy it, way more than I thought. I was so hooked. If you don't know anything about Fourth Wing, it is about a girl named Violet who enters a military training school where she will learn how to ride a dragon. The premise to me sounded really fun, and I'm glad that I gave it a try and pushed through the first chapter. I think if you can deal with that, I feel like the beginning of the first book was like some of the worst dialogue and worst writing of the whole series. So I got, or not the whole series, I haven't read the whole series, we'll get into that, but it definitely just got better as I went on, I think, and I had so much fun reading it. I was like so invested in what was gonna happen. I don't want to give anything away, but discovered I actually really enjoyed the spicy scenes, and so I am kind of intrigued to look for more. I think knowing myself, like thinking back on myself a few months ago or a few years ago, I don't know, definitely earlier this year, I would have never thought that I wanted to read spicy books, spicy romantasy, whatever. I would have been like, nah, not into it, pass. But it was really fun. I liked it. So I think if you aren't opposed to it, maybe be open to it and see how you feel. I think that it's really important to not feel ashamed for sexuality in general as a concept. So I think having fun books like this helps with that, helps to combat that kind of like sense of shame that can often come with like anything to do with sex. So that's all I'll say on that bit. As I was reading The Fourth Wing, I read it through the library, and I was surprised I got it like really quickly, I guess because it's been out a while. I don't think I had to wait at all for The Fourth Wing. And while I was probably halfway through it, I was like, that's it, I gotta read the next one. And so I put a hold on Iron Flame, and I got it, I said it would be 2 weeks, but I got it before I even finished The Fourth Wing. So right after that, I read through Iron Flame. I will say, I think going into the Iron Flame, I felt like it was quite a bit slower, or just like took a while for me to get hooked on it. I didn't find that I was like as hooked until about halfway through the book, which was really quite long. They're both pretty long. I read them on my iPad, but on my iPad I think the second one said it was 700, almost 800 pages, and so it wasn't till 300 something pages in that I got the same feeling as I did in the first book of like being really hungry to read more and seeing what happens. I did put a hold at the library for Onyx Storm. I think that one's like 4 months out still, so I'm not sure if I'll wait that long, but something about me wants to like keep it consistent and read in the same format as the other ones, which I could buy the ebook and then it'd be consistent, but it's not the same. It's not the same as checking it out from the library. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. Okay, so finally, which of these books that I read this month would I put on my book truck? To clarify, I don't have a book truck right now, but it's a little dream. I feel like it would be so much fun to get to share books and drive it around town and just bring that kind of joy to people. So what would I put on there? The Fourth Wing, absolutely, and everything in that series I would definitely include. It's just so much fun. I know some people hate it and they think it's overhyped, but I loved it. I would definitely put Pride and Prejudice on there as well. I thought it was great, and it's so beloved by so many people. I don't know that I would include Persuasion unless I'm trying to include like all of Jane Austen's works, because I would include the other books I've read by her, but if I only had limited space, I would not include Persuasion. I would definitely include Pride and Prejudice though. The last one I would include would be The Emissary. I thought it was just such a funky, interesting little book. I would love to include it and hope that people would buy it and we could talk about it together maybe after they read it. Maybe they could stand there and read it. Probably not. It's a pretty short book, but not quite that short. That's all I've got for the April reading wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned if you want to see what I read next month. I'm also planning a try a chapter vlog where I try samples of a bunch of different books that are on my TBR. I really appreciate you. Hope you have a cozy day or night. And tell me what you're reading right now. I would love to know and love to talk about it. Bye!